You know, we talked a little bit before you got here, before the show tonight, about, you know, this is an independent theater. Your movie is an independent movie. You talked about some projects that you were involved with. I'm sure you put your heart into, and it, in a weird way, it is like kind of threading a needle sometimes to get something special made. Talk a little bit about sort of working to whatever degree outside the system to get what you really want to be made. I always tell people, now tonight, this is an independent film. There's not necessarily a whole bunch of advertising behind it, and the only way movies like this work and succeed are by everybody leaving the theater and going and saying, hey, you gotta go check out at Middleton. Talk about sort of that process, because we've become very much, that word of mouth is incredibly important now.
Most of the movies that we grew up with, even The Godfather, if The Godfather Part 1 did not have the novel behind it, the great novel by Mario Puzo, if it was the same exact script, and Mr. Mancuso probably will attest to this today, and that script went out and was delivered to a major studio today, they would not make it. It would be an independent movie about the Corleone mafia family in the, in the 1940s, and that it would be that, There would not be, that of course had the big novel and all that, but today, in today's market, that would not be a studio movie. And neither would Coming Home, or Taxi Driver, or Mean Streets, or McCabe and Mrs. Miller, or Nashville, or Help Me Out, or French Connection, or the
Bonnie
Apocalypse Now,
Clyde,
Bonnie Clyde. They would all be independent films. And all those movies, Midnight Cowboy, they were all studio movies.
Why has that changed? Why have the studios gotten out of the business of making those kinds of movies?
Mr. Mancuso will answer that question better than I, but it seems to me they're going for a very large audience, in 33,000 theaters on a Friday night with mass, the demographic is younger, and it's a movie that can play internationally, open at the same time in every country, with huge advertising budgets, and then with alternative transformers and things you can buy in the stores, and when you put all those caveats on it, it's impossible to make any other movie than some of those movies. And every so often, of course, one sneaks through. It's a director-driven thing. You get Captain Phillips, or you get great films, but it's a small percentage of the other ones, So the independent cinema, everybody struggles to make the movies that we were making in the 70s. And Hal Ashby today would not make one studio movie, none, zero. So the new type of distribution is sort of day and date. It'll be in a theater, but you can also watch it on video on demand tonight at home. You could have stayed home and watch it video on demand. Right, but I mean, these are the things. These are the things that are happening in our world. You can't get away from it, because it is what it is, and the budgets have to be, in order to make an independent film, the budgets have to drop, and you have to make things for less money, not necessarily less quality, but less money.
And I would imagine then, as a writer, that's the same story for you. It gets harder and harder to get made, the projects that are close to your heart, unless the project close to your heart involves a guy in a cape.
Yeah, I mean, we Adam and I had worked for 13 years and sold, maybe 6 things, and made a decent living, but nothing ever got made, and nobody buys anything with the intent of not making it, but it just, certain circumstances prevented anything from being made, and at some point we just made a very conscious decision. Let's not write something that we think somebody will buy. Let's write something that we could make, that was, small enough in scope, 2 adults walking and talking on a college campus, that, we would want to see. And lo and behold, it's our first, produced film. And so, I mean, took a long time to learn that lesson, but I think we'd love to work at a much higher level and, write studio movies, but again, it's just, it's not a lot of work, and so I think what our time is best spent doing is just sort of writing things that are personal and that mean a lot to us and that are emotionally involving, that you can make for a price, and that have wonderful roles that attract talent like Andy Garcia, and hopefully get your movie made.
And it got made.
It did.
And it's a great film. That's a great thing. We talked about some of your projects coming up. A couple of them involve Ernest Hemingway, and you mentioned something about working with one of Hemingway's daughters. Is that right?
His niece, Hillary,
niece.
yes.
I'm just out of left field, but I just read Old Man and the Sea recently. Is that where your sort of connection to Hemingway
It's around
comes
the
from?
time when he wrote the actual book. It takes place in the last 10 years of his life.
And what is it about Hemingway for you that draws you to him?
Well, the book, I was a big fan of the book, and I'm a fisherman myself, and I knew a lot of captains that fished with Hemingway. There were captains in the South Florida area where I used to fish with my father-in-law and his captain, and I was always fascinated with the conceit about, you know, what motivated that story, the world of, you know, why he was attracted to Cuba. He lived there for the last 20 years of his life. He had the same captain. And then I read an anecdote saying that when he died, just before he committed suicide, he left Cuba. By then Castro had taken over. It was like 1961. And he left Cuba. He knew that his properties were going to get confiscated because all the American properties were being confiscated by the government. And then all the Cuban, were also, he eventually confiscated everything. But, so he left his boat to Gregorio, who was the captain of his boat for the last 20 years. It was his closest friend, really. And when Hemingway committed suicide, Gregorio took the boat out of the water and never fished on it again. And I heard that anecdote, and I wanted to make a movie about that relationship, and that led to that moment. And so I just began.
I actually wanted to wrap up, if it's okay with you, because I spend about 75% of my week talking about the Lakers. And I see you at Laker games, sitting there under the press box. And I'm guessing we have some Laker fans here. I'm just going to guess.
Okay.
Some former Laker fans.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, it's a cyclical thing, not everything can sustain, it's a cyclical thing. We're in the rebuilding cycle, it is what it is. And, we had a cycle like that, and we were kind of on a downtrend, and we made some trades, and then we won a couple of championships recently. So it's a cycle. You got to be patient. There'll be an upswing at some point here coming through, and it's just have to be patient. It is what it is. You can't stay on top. I mean, the greatest franchises in the world, the Boston Celtics, the Lakers, the Knicks. I mean, it is what it is.
I've always assumed that.
I got bigger issues than the Lakers.
But I've always assumed that because you don't sit on the floor. Why do you not sit on the floor? Do you want to
Because I make independent films.
There you go. I think it's a choice. I think you want to see the game from a higher point of view, from a better point of view. Is that not right?
When I left the Forum, I had seats right behind the Laker. I started up behind the Laker bench on the Forum. I mean, literally like 2 rows behind the bench. And it was great because I could hear all the conversation, but I couldn't see the game for shit, because they're all like 6'10", and you're on the same level as them. And I would spend the whole game like this, And then, but I was kind of down in there, but it was ridiculous, You can never saw the ball touch the floor. And so when they moved to the Staples Center, Tim Harris, who became a friend, he called me in and he said, okay, come over, I want you to pick your seats, within the price range that I had. It was a floor seat. So I sat, I said, where do I want to sit? I went in there, this beautiful place, where do I want to sit, where do I want to sit? I said, do I want to be behind the bench, or do I want to be across the bench on the other side so I could see the coaches and talking, or do I want to be behind them, which I just see the back of their head? All these things are going through my mind. So I said, no, I think I'm going to want to be, so I can see the bench and see Phil and see their reactions. I'll be across the court. So then I went right across the court, and then I started sitting, in each, and I said, I want to be on the aisle, so I don't have, if I have to go, I'll take a leak or whatever, I want to get up and go. I don't want to have to, bother 10 people. So I started sitting, one row, the first row, and I said, no, I don't want to do that because I can't see the court. I know the ball's not going to be able to. I kept going back, and then I got to the row And people are going, why the hell is he telling this story?
No, I love
So
it.
now we
Actually, Tim Harris told me this story.
So now we get to the where the glass is for the hockey. And that exists there, right? And that's the roomiest seat because you get like a double leg room, right?
It's like the exit aisle.
Yeah, so it's like you can sit like very comfortably, but you're still too low. You can't see the ball hit the ground. So I kept going up until I got to like row 4. And when I thought that with sitting comfortably, I could see the entire court, even if someone was sitting on the court. I could see above their head and I could see the ball. I said, these two right here. And Tim said, okay, good. So that's how I got
And all of a sudden I realized, no, I can actually, there is a little bit of George in you. The way you described where your seats are going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love George. I'm a huge fan of Tati and Keaton and all those people. And George is one of the, even in the character in City Island had that, I was able to pay tribute to that genre a little bit in that movie too. And it's, given another opportunity, I'll jump in again.
It's the toughest genre to pull off, I think, romantic comedy. It's like it can go too far and then it doesn't work, or it doesn't go far enough. City Island, perfect, because the characters are just sort of eccentric enough without kind of tipping over, and still somehow, I think you guys find the heart
the
of the whole
sense
thing.
of truth has to always be there, even in those comedies. And what makes those movies those great classic comedic moments is the sense of truth in the moment. Even when Keaton is sitting and standing there, and the house is falling on him, and it falls, and he happens to be standing where the window is, so it never affects him. He is in such a deep state of emotional state that he doesn't recognize that a house is falling on him. But that state that he's in is not an acted state. It's a very organic truth that he's in. And you recognize it as an audience. And that's what made him such, the stone face was just not a face that he would put on. It was an emotional reality that he had within himself that he was able to, that was very personal to him. And we recognized that as an audience. And then he put himself in that state of mind in situations that were very funny. And when George and Edith are in the acting class and George starts to break down, I don't know what happened tonight because I walked in a little late, but we've been in screenings, and when he starts to cry, people start to laugh. And they start to laugh, and I don't know if it's, we always say, was that nervous laughter? Do they not believe that he's really going through this? It's a very curious thing. I know it makes people uncomfortable, but people find it funny, so it's a very unique, and there's nothing phony about it. George is in deep, deep sorrow there, and in deep, deep pain. There's no joke going on in George. He's lost himself in this sort of psychotherapy moment with Edith and this whole situation. And I think he says, okay, you brought me into this moment. You want to play these games, Edith? Okay, I'm going to play this game with you now. You put me in this situation. Let's see what you got, kind of thing. And that's the beautiful thing about that moment. That he just says, enough of this. I can't do this anymore. And then he loses himself in that moment. None of that was improvised. That's all scripted material. The only line that's improvised in that scene, other than the behavior upstairs, is where I say, she said, come on, George. And first of all, I say, no, it's not working for me either. And then they say, come upstairs. And I go, no, it's working for me fine. That's the only line that came out. George said it. I didn't invent it. The characters speak. When you're in character, they got something to say, they just say it. It's not like the actor going, I think I'll say this. No, it's really the character speaking, He's just really, you're in the moment and the guy is just taking over. And as an actor, that's the most sublime thing as an actor, when the character has taken over and you're just like a vehicle for him,
Final thought here, because we don't want to keep you all night, and I think there's another show time of the movie coming up. At that last line, take the long way. What does it mean to George?
I got to tell you a really interesting story about that. It wasn't the last line in the movie, and we were getting the car up onto the trailer to go, and they were going out to shoot the last thing, and the last line in the script was, Middleton's not so bad. And then as Andy was going out, I said, Andy, I really think that George should have the last line of the movie. I mean, it was really sort of like in the parking lot as they were getting ready to get up on the car. And we talked about a couple of options, and then Andy just did that. And I think it's one of the most, we had just a wonderful review in the Hollywood Reporter, and he singled out that line at the end of the movie. And I think for me what it means is that, he needs to be alone with that memory as long as he can before he gets back into his normal life. And I just, that delivery, every time I see it, just kills me. Because it's so much, there's so much behind it, and so much pain, and it's, I don't know, I really...
It was one take and we lost the light. That was the last...
It was 9 o'clock at night. The camera's wide open. I mean, we're shooting in Washington State, which, thankfully stays lighter a lot later. But yeah, I mean, it was as literally as
I
wide.
only said it once, and then we lost the light, and then we lost the light.
That was it.
And
Yeah, we shot in Washington State. We stitched together 2 colleges. Gonzaga was we shot 2 weeks there, and then 1 week in Washington State, which is about an hour south in Pullman. And both colleges just wonderful hosts, and really pretty campuses, and had all the physical things that we needed for the movie.
And then Andy, as an actor, in that one line, what were you saying?
take the long way home.
Yeah.
It is what it is, man.
It is what it is. It is what it is. I want to stop right there because that's a good line. The movie is at Middleton. Obviously, you know, as we said, independent movies like this succeed because people who come to events like these go tell other people. So please go tell your friends and everybody know about At Middleton. It's a wonderful film.
Thank you all so much.
We wanted everybody to see it. Andy Garcia, thank you. Appreciate it. Glenn, thank you so much. Wonderful screenplay.